There are betrayals that scream. And then there are betrayals that sit quietly in your life, smiling at you every day, while slowly taking everything you built with your bare hands. I didn't lose my home that day. I didn't lose my money overnight. I lost something far more fragile, my faith and loyalty. And the man who watched it shatter without blinking. If you've ever trusted someone blindly, if you've ever believed that goodness would protect you, then please stay with me until the very end of this story. And before I continue, if stories like this touch something deep inside you, gently tap like, subscribe, and stay, because what I'm about to share still lives in the quiet corners of my heart. I used to believe betrayal only came from enemies. I was wrong. He was my husband. And the man he destroyed was his best friend. I'm telling you this now, sitting alone, years later, with my hands wrapped around memories that still feel warm, even though they burn me alive. When I met my husband, he wasn't wealthy. Neither was I. We were both hungry for something better, not just money, but meaning. We dreamed loudly back then. The kind of dreams people laugh at until they come true, and standing beside him always was his best friend. Let's call him Amir. Amir was the kind of man who showed up without being asked. When my husband talked about building a business, Amir believed before anyone else did. When we didn't have enough money to rent an office, Amir offered his garage. When my husband doubted himself, Amir reminded him who he was. I watched their brotherhood with quiet admiration. Two men against the world. And me, proud, hopeful, trusting, right in the middle of it. We started small. So small that sometimes our dinner was just tea and bread. I handled the accounts. I made spreadsheets late into the night. I skipped celebrations. I sold my jewelry piece by piece to keep us afloat. And Amir invested not just his savings, but his reputation. He brought clients. He vouched for us. He put his name on the line when we had nothing to show for ourselves. I remember one night vividly. The electricity was gone. The room was lit by a single candle. The three of us sat on the floor, papers spread everywhere, sweat on our brows. Amir laughed and said, "One day we'll laugh at this." My husband smiled. I smiled too. None of us knew what that smile would cost. The business grew slowly, painfully. There were months of loss, weeks of silence from clients. Nights where my husband stared at the ceiling like it held answers. Amir never left. He declined other opportunities because he believed in what they were building together. He trusted my husband like a brother trusts blood, and I trusted both of them. Success doesn't arrive loudly. It creeps in quietly, wearing patience as a disguise. The first big contract came on an ordinary Tuesday. I remember because I was folding laundry when my husband ran into the house, breathless. Eyes shining. We celebrated with cheap sweets and laughter. Amir hugged my husband so tightly I thought they might break. That night, I noticed something changed. Not in Amir, in my husband. He began staying late. He became protective, not of the business, but of information. At first, I told myself it was stress. Men carry ambition like a wound. They hide it until it festers. But then small things started slipping through the cracks. Bank statements that didn't match. Emails deleted before I could read them. Meetings Amir wasn't invited to. When I asked, my husband would smile and say, "Don't worry. I'm handling it." I wanted to believe him, because love makes you loyal even to your own blindness. Amir came over one evening, his face tired, his voice uncertain. He asked gently, "Is everything okay?" He hasn't returned my calls. I looked at my husband. He didn't look back at me. That was the first moment my chest tightened. The kind of tightness you ignore until it becomes pain. Soon after, I noticed my husband had opened a new account. Not under the company name. Not shared with AMR. Just his. When I asked, he snapped. His voice sharp, unfamiliar. "You don't understand business," he said. "You handle the house." Those words didn't just hurt. They erased me. And they erased Amir too. Behind closed doors, decisions were being made. Contracts were being rewritten. Ownership percentages shifted quietly, legally, strategically, mercilessly. Amir found out by accident. A client congratulated him on selling his share. He laughed at first. Then he came to us, confused, shaken, still trusting. I will never forget the look on his face when my husband explained it away. Smooth words. Half-truths, promises of future compensation. And Amir, loyal to the end, believed him. I didn't, because that night, when the house was silent, I cried in the bathroom so my sobs wouldn't wake anyone. I realized something terrible. The man I loved was capable of destroying the man who saved him. And if he could do that, what did that make me? Weeks passed. Then months. The business flourished publicly. Awards, recognition, respect. But inside our home, something rotted. Amir's calls stopped coming. His name became forbidden. When I mentioned him, my husband's jaw tightened. He was holding us back. He said he should have seen it coming. I started seeing my husband differently, not as a dreamer, but as a man who believed success justified anything. One evening, I ran into Amir by chance. He looked thinner, older. He smiled when he saw me, a sad, careful smile. "I lost everything," he said quietly. "But I hope it was worth it for him." I had no answer. Because betrayal doesn't just ruin the betrayed. It stains everyone who stays silent. That night, I lay awake next to my husband, staring at the ceiling. I understood then, this wasn't just his betrayal. It was my awakening. And something inside me began to change. Slowly, painfully, irreversibly, the silence between us grew heavy. And karma, quiet, patient karma, had already started watching, not to punish him yet, but to teach me who I was becoming. Asterisk, there's a strange kind of grief that doesn't arrive with noise. It doesn't knock. It doesn't warn you. It just settles inside your chest one day and refuses to leave. After Amir disappeared from our lives, the house felt bigger, not quieter, emptier. Like something honest had been removed, leaving only echoes of success bouncing off the walls. My husband thrived in that emptiness. New clients, new cars, new respect from people who once ignored him. They called him self-made. Every time I heard those words, something inside me flinched. At night, I would lie beside him and listen to his breathing, steady, confident, untroubled. I used to match my breath to his, believing that love meant synchronizing your heart with another. Now, my breath felt foreign in my own body. The guilt didn't scream at me. It whispered. It whispered when I folded his expensive suits. It whispered when I watched him shake hands with powerful men, smiling the same smile he once shared on a candlelit floor. And it screamed only once, the night I saw Amir's mother at the market. She recognized me instantly. She didn't accuse. She didn't cry. She just looked at me and said, "He doesn't sleep anymore." That was it. No dramatic confrontation. No public shame. Just a mother's quiet sentence, heavy enough to collapse my lungs. I went home that day and stood in the shower until the water turned cold. I wanted it to wash something off me. I didn't know what. I began to withdraw. Not from the world, from him. He noticed, of course. Men like him always do. Not because they care deeply, but because they sense loss of control. "You've changed," he said one evening, casually, as if commenting on the weather. "So have you," I replied. He laughed. That laugh, the one that used to feel warm, now sounded practiced. "You're overthinking," he said. "Everything we have now. It's because I made hard choices. Hard choices. That's what betrayal becomes when it succeeds." I stopped arguing. I learned something important during that silence. When you stop explaining your pain to someone who profits from it, you begin to hear yourself. And what I heard terrified me. I had given everything to a life that no longer reflected me. My sacrifices had been absorbed into his image, polished, renamed, repackaged as ambition. I wasn't his partner anymore. I was his background. So I began doing something dangerous. I started remembering who I was before him. Late at night, while he slept, I reopened old files, accounts, contracts, records I once managed when we were still equals. I didn't do it out of revenge. Not yet. I did it because something inside me needed truth. The kind that exists in numbers and signatures, not excuses. What I found was worse than I imagined. Assets quietly moved. Liabilities strategically assigned. Amir's name reduced to footnotes, erased without being erased. It was clean, legal. Cruel in the way only intelligence can be. I felt sick, but alongside that sickness, something else stirred. Clarity. I realized my husband didn't just betray his best friend. He studied betrayal, perfected it, believed it was a skill, and suddenly, I understood something that changed everything. A man who sees people as stepping stones eventually trips over one that night. I didn't cry. I sat at the dining table until sunrise, watching light creep across the floor. And I made a decision so quiet even I didn't hear it fully at first. I would stop shrinking. Not loudly, not dramatically. But permanently. I enrolled in courses under the excuse of keeping busy. Finance, management, strategy. He mocked it gently, trying to compete with me. He joked. I smiled. No, I said. I'm trying to remember myself. He didn't understand that sentence. That's how I knew I was already ahead. Weeks turned into months. The more I grew, the more uncomfortable he became. He lacked me dependent emotionally, financially, silently. But growth changes the temperature of a room. Even people who don't understand why begin to sweat. He started coming home irritated. Short-tempered. Small failures crept into his success. A deal delayed. A partner hesitant. A rumor, barely audible, but present. I said nothing. Karma doesn't rush. It studies timing. One evening, he came home unusually quiet. He sat across from me at dinner and didn't touch his food. Amir's suing, he said finally. There it was, not panic. Not guilt. Annoyance. Double quotes. He thinks I cheated him. My husband continued. Can you believe that? I looked at him, really looked. The lines around his eyes were deeper, his confidence thinner. For the first time, I saw fear, not fear of consequences, fear of exposure. I nodded slowly. Did you? I asked. He didn't answer. Silence is an answer when spoken by the guilty. That night, he slept restlessly. I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Because I finally understood this truth, I didn't need to destroy him. His choices were already doing that, slowly, publicly, irreversibly. Amir's lawsuit dragged on. The media whispered. Partners pulled back, and I kept growing. I built something of my own, quietly, consulting. Advisory work. Clients trusted me, not because I was ruthless, but because I was fair. The irony wasn't lost on me. One evening, as I prepared to leave for a meeting, my husband stopped me at the door. You don't need this, he said. We have enough. That word once meant security. Now it meant confinement. I need this, I replied calmly. And soon, you'll understand why. He didn't, but he would, because while he was fighting to keep what he took, I was building something no one could steal. And somewhere in the distance, karma was no longer watching. It was walking toward us. Quietly. Patiently. Unstoppable. Asterisk. There's a moment when the noise finally stops. Not the noise of the world, the noise inside you. The questions, the ache, the endless replaying of what you should have seen sooner. That moment came for me on an ordinary morning. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for something to happen. I wasn't bracing myself for disappointment. I wasn't holding my breath around someone else's mood. I was just breathing. By then, my husband's world had begun to unravel, not dramatically. Not all at once, but in the way things truly fall apart piece by piece, unnoticed by those who are too proud to look down. The lawsuit with Amir didn't destroy him overnight. It exhausted him. Court dates postponed, emails unanswered. Partners who once praised his vision suddenly needed distance. Success abandoned him the same way loyalty once had. Quietly. At home, he changed. He talked less. Listen more, not because he'd grown, but because he was losing ground. One evening, I came home late from work. My phone had died. I expected anger. Instead, I found him sitting on the couch in the dark. I didn't think you'd ever become this, he said. It wasn't an insult. It wasn't a compliment. It was disbelief. I set my bag down slowly. Neither did you, I replied. That night, he tried to talk about the past, not the betrayal. Not AMR. The good past, trips we took, laughs we shared, struggles that bonded us before success rewrote the story. It was then I understood something painful and true. People only romanticize beginnings. When endings threaten them, weeks later, a mere one, not everything, but enough. Enough money to rebuild. Enough truth to restore his name. The judgment wasn't loud. No cameras. No celebration. Just justice. Plain and unremarkable. My husband came home pale. They think I'm a villain, he said, more confused than angry. They don't, I replied gently. They just see you clearly now. That night, he asked me something I never thought I'd hear. Do you still love me? I took a long time to answer. Love isn't something you lose suddenly. It fades when it's no longer safe. I care about who you were, I said. But I respect who I've become, he nodded. Slowly, that was the moment he realized he had lost me, not to another person. Not to revenge, but to my own awakening. The separation wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No accusations, just two people packing a life that no longer fit. On my last day in that house, I stood in the doorway and remembered the woman who once believed loyalty was enough. I smiled at her. She did her best. Months passed. I heard about him occasionally through mutual contacts. Through whispers, smaller contracts. Less influence. He still had money. But money without admiration is heavy. One afternoon, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Amir. He thanked me, not for evidence. Not for sides taken, but for silence that eventually turned into truth. I cried after reading it, not out of sadness, out of release, because closure doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it arrives as forgiveness you never expected. Today, I sit in a different home. The walls don't echo. They listen. I built this life slowly, honestly. I choose people carefully now. I value integrity over ambition. Peace over power. And sometimes, when the night is quiet, I think of him. Not with anger, not with pride, but with a calm understanding. He betrayed his best friend and lost himself in the process. I didn't win because he fell. I won because I stood up. And karma didn't scream. It didn't humiliate. It simply returned everything to where it belonged.